When I look back across the whole path now, the strange thing is not the intensity of the descent. The strange thing is the structure. At the time, every stage felt chaotic, personal, unpredictable. A moment of clarity followed by utter confusion. Insight followed by explosive collapse. Progress followed by destabilizing confrontation. But with distance, the pattern becomes visible. The journey was never a straight line. It was a spiral. Each phase returned to questions I had already faced, but from a deeper level of understanding. Ancient alchemists describe the final stage of transformation as Rubedo, the reddening, the moment when matter that had been broken apart and purified begins to recombine into something whole again. It is not a return to the original state, far from it. It is the emergence of a new integration, which formed from everything that survived the fire. In psychological language, the same process appears when identity reorganizes after crisis. Earlier beliefs dissolve, new perspectives appear, but the real change is quieter and more subtle than the stages of collapse. It shows up in the body, in the rhythm of waking up, in training, in working, in resting, in the ability to feel strong emotions without losing orientation, in the recognition that insight means very little without the discipline to carry it. This stage doesn't impress anyone watching from the outside. It looks like ordinary, boring life. And that is exactly the point. Transformation that cannot survive ordinary life was never transformation at all. Rubedo, in the alchemical texts, did not describe mystical escape. It described integration. The fire had done its work. What remained now had to function in the world again, paying bills, keeping promises, sleeping at night, treating other people with honesty and restraint and dignity. In that sense, the end of the labyrinth does not feel like triumph at all. It feels like responsibility. And the spiral itself now looks less like a private metaphor and more like a language life has always used. The same curve appearing in old carvings, in ritual forms, in pilgrimage, in the body's own returning patterns. Not a line of self-improvement, a repeated unfolding that asks each time whether I can carry more truth with less drama. If this journey means anything beyond one life, then the only honest response is to offer a blessing rather than an instruction. Because no map eliminates risk. Every descent carries uncertainty. The best anyone can do is speak with clarity about the terrain. In many traditions, the end of a teaching is marked with a benediction, a moment where the teacher stops explaining and simply wishes the traveler strength. That feels like the right posture here. This is not a self-help book. It is not aimed to fix or to treat or to cure. It was never meant to offer a neat program for human transformation. It is a rite of passage, of fire, of silence, of mystery, and of testimony from inside the spiral. If it belongs anywhere, it belongs to the seekers, to the wanderers, to the wounded healers, to the wild mystics, and to the modern initiates. Anyone who has stood at the edge of the known world and heard something deeper calling, and anyone who has returned changed enough to recognize the call in others. Do not apologize for the fire that lives inside the human psyche. Curiosity, imagination, longing for truth. These forces are not mistakes. They are deep and they are inherent. They are part of our architecture that pushes human beings beyond the surface of life. But do not worship that fire either. The same energy that illuminates the world can burn down everything around it when that energy is not contained. Ancient teachers understood this tension clearly. They honored the intensity of spiritual longing while also insisting on discipline and humility and accountability. Blessing someone on this path therefore means reminding them of both sides, the boring, mundane, autistic routine that anchors the body and grounds discernment, and whatever insights come through the discovery which could never be put into words or articulated, those deep knowings and feelings deep within the heart space. But remember, that meaning never cancels consequence. Laws still exist, bodies still break, words still affect other people. The fire inside the psyche must be carried with care. That is the blessing I would offer anyone standing at the threshold of the labyrinths. May your curiosity remain alive, but may your discipline remain stronger than your fascination with the intensity. And if you take anything from this at all, let it be something usable. Name your medicines honestly. Keep the thread in your hand and bound to your heart, and leave behind a little more ground for the next edgewalker than you found for yourself. One of the most important recognitions that comes late in the journey is the understanding that the spiral never truly ends. Human consciousness moves through cycles, periods of clarity, periods of confusion, phases where life feels ordered, followed by phases where deeper questions reopen. Hindu cosmology described this rhythm through the idea of kalpas, vast cycles of creation, of dissolution, and of renewal repeating across cosmic time. The symbol points towards something psychological as well as mythic. Life does not progress in a straight upward line. It is not linear. It expands and it contracts and it reorganizes, and then it expands again. The same pattern appears in the psyche after descent. Moments arise where the mind begins asking deeper questions again. Old emotions reappear and show their faces in new forms. Stress or loss can reopen corridors that once seemed resolved. At first, this can feel incredibly discouraging. It may appear as though the work of transformation has somehow been undone. But over time, a different understanding develops. The spiral is not a failure of progress. It is the structure of growth itself. Each return moves through familiar territory with more stability than before. Where the confusion once produced panic, now it produces curiosity. Where fear once produced collapse, now it produces caution and reflection. The Kalpa image reminds us that the human mind belongs to a larger rhythm of change. Trying to freeze life into permanent certainty is impossible, and it's a waste of time. What matters instead is learning how to remain oriented while the spiral continues moving. That orientation still comes from the same simple anchors: sleep, body regulation, honest relationships, discipline. The thread does not disappear when the spiral turns again. And over time, even recurrence changes flavor. The same symbols no longer arrive as commands. The same inner openings no longer demand total belief. They become part of a wider field of repetition. Old themes returning with new depth, like a spiral dance rather than another collapse. The path remains moving, but it is no longer moving blindly. At some point, the role of the traveler changes again. Earlier in the journey, the focus is survival, holding the thread long enough to find your own way out of the labyrinth, to stabilize yourself, to come back to reality. Later, the question becomes different. What do you do with the thread once you have it in your hands? Once it is firmly anchored to your heart? Across many cultures, the answer was communal. Rituals existed to contain experiences that could otherwise overwhelm individuals. In trance traditions, elders surrounded initiates with music. with movement, and with shared presence, so that altered states unfolded inside of a structure, inside of a container, rather than in isolation. These practices were not mystical entertainment. They were forms of psychological and spiritual containment, designed to protect both the initiate as well as the community. Modern societies rarely maintain those structures. When people encounter intense psychological or spiritual experiences today, they often do so alone, without the guidance, without the container, and the mind can mistake that intensity for truth or personal importance. That is why offering the thread matters. The thread is not a secret knowledge. It is not available to those who have money or power. It is practical containment. It is available and accessible to all. It doesn't care if you're black, white, old, young, rich, poor, alive or on your deathbed. It is how you stay connected. It is how you stay grounded when your interpretations become extreme. It is how you respect the law. It is how you abide by consequence and responsibility, even when the inner world feels extraordinary. The simple practices function like temples built around human transformation. They prevent the labyrinth from becoming a trap. Offering the thread therefore means encouraging people to build those structures consciously and deliberately in their lives. Not to avoid the depths of the psyche, but to enter them with enough stability to return again. Because not everyone returns. It also means remembering relationship rather than consumption. The old traditions of offering to land, to water, to fire, to ancestors, to community, to God. They understood something modern culture often forgets. Intense experience must be inside reciprocity. It must be contained to something larger than oneself. And it cannot be based in extraction. If all we take from suffering is identity, we feed the maze. If we use it to build better circles, quieter rooms, more honest support, then the thread becomes communal medicine. That is the kind of containment I trust most. Not pathologized, not sensationalized, just human beings held with dignity, with rhythm, and with enough truth to keep them safe and alive, and to make them want to live and want to rebuild after complete and utter destruction and devastation and chaos. After all is said and done, the image that remains with me is simple. Imagine standing above the labyrinth rather than inside of it. From that perspective, the corridors no longer look confusing. They reveal a pattern, a spiral moving inward and outward through repeated turns. When you stand inside the maze, every corner feels uncertain. When you step above it, the design becomes visible. Many ancient cultures used spiral symbols to describe life for exactly this reason. The Celtic spiral carved into stone monuments, the Maori koru unfolding from a fern, the Andean chicana mapping the relationship between different levels of existence, sacred labyrinths in stone and cathedral floors, medicine wheels, pilgrimages circling around mountains, around shrines, or around altars. Each symbol expresses the same idea. Movement through life does not follow a straight path, but a repeating curve that returns to familiar places with deeper and deeper awareness. The final lesson of the labyrinth is not how to escape the spiral. It is how to walk consciously, psychologically. That means accepting that the same themes can return without assuming you have failed. Grief can return, fear can return, inflation can return, grandiosity can return. So can the temptation to abandon the body, to neglect the basics, to step away from community, the temptation to break the law, to abandon consequence. Integration is not immunity. It is recognition plus response. And at the center of the maze, there is always some version of the Minotaur. Inner shadow, violence, trauma, fear, unintegrated rage. A monster made from all of those things which I refuse to face, or we as a community refuse to face. The task was never to kill complexity and be done with it. The task was to meet it, to know its shape, and to not feed it in secret. The small things that guide you back out when the atmosphere changes. The small things that actually create the bedrock for you to live a life, to remain humble, to stay close to people, to allow all of the things waiting beneath the surface to grow out of the forest fire of destruction that you went through. When the spiral tightens and life becomes difficult again, you have to return to those anchors. There is no other way. When the spiral opens and life becomes calm again, keep them anyway. Don't let them go. The labyrinth never truly disappears from human experience at the individual level or at the collective level. But something changes once you have walked its corridors with discipline and once you have returned to ordinary life. You no longer expect the path to be straight. You understand the shape of the spiral, and that understanding allows you to walk forward, not as someone who conquered the labyrinth, or someone who is superior or above it, but someone who knows how to live inside it, one grounded step at a time. And if there is any final blessing I would leave here, it is, may you not mistake recurrence for failure. May you not mistake intensity for truth. And may you keep the thread close enough that when the old corridors return, you know exactly where to place your feet, step by step. Whether you watch this Labyrinth series close to when it was released, or whether you have come across this in years to come, this has been forged through hardship, through great pain, through unspeakable damage and instability and chaos and destruction. This is a thread that I am continuing to hold, which I'm sharing with others because I know other people are in need in the same way that I am. Thank you if you have reached the end of this Labyrinth series. Thank you for being a part of this journey. And thank you for investing in yourself and learning this practical, simple path of returning to order after being in chaos.